Interested in reading a medieval theological text but have no idea where to start? This video is for you. It's a poorly kept secret that our knowledge of church history, especially in the West, and perhaps particularly in Protestant settings, goes from early church, jumps to Augustine, we make a quick stopover at Aquinas, and then goes on to the Reformation. I can attest from my own experience at Moody Bible Institute, that is essentially the broad strokes outline of church history that we used in our introductory classes, and you'd really have to be in much higher level classes to do any type of deeper dive. But even in those cases, you're often going on a deep dive in the early church or going to the Reformation, or maybe it's Aquinas. But the medieval period, well, I mean, we can just kind of write that all off anyway, right? And even for those outside of Protestantism, I think the medieval period is often looked at as, well, kind of the Dark Ages. And even if not the Dark Ages, it's theology that's just going to be too confusing or too weird for us. I mean, between scholasticism and wild mysticism, it's just altogether unapproachable, right? Well, I was recently having a conversation with a dear friend of mine who's the pastor of a Protestant church, and he said, you know, Austin, what I love about your channel is you introduce me to people that I would have never known before from church history. You know, so often I look to the early church, or maybe I look to Augustine. I love reading those people. But when we get into the 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, so on before the Reformation, it's just often kind of a wasteland for me. I'm just not familiar with that time period. And whether that's for theological convictions or just because it's out of intimidation, I think a lot of us can relate. So in today's video, I want to talk about the number one medieval text that I would have you start with. That book is Spiritual Friendship by St. Aelred of Rievaulx. I might be pronouncing both of those words wrong, both Aelred and Rievaulx, but we're going to go with it because it's my YouTube channel and I don't know how to say it any better. Correct me in the comments down below if you know how to say it better. He was a Cistercian abbot born in the year 1110 in England. In this book, he talks about the beauty and wonder of friendship. And I would recommend this book to beginners to medieval theology for two reasons. One is because it is incredibly accessible. Like other medieval writers, I believe Anselm did this as well, and it's a venerable tradition throughout the medieval period. He writes it in the form of a dialogue between himself and two more junior monks. And it's really fascinating kind of how he puts questions in their mouth and then responds to them and expounds his theology through that. The second reason I would recommend it, in addition to being accessible, is that it's a topic that is so needed in our time today. Now, I'll refrain from making this video entirely about our dearth of modern friendship, but I do think so many of us recognize that something is lacking in the modern world, mainly in our relationships, that our social ties are weaker than ever. And this isn't just an intuition, but this has been proven out in study after study that the number of people that we count as close friends is decreasing. Our reported rates of loneliness are increasing. And it's no surprise, therefore, that our feelings of depression, isolation, anxiety are also going up. While we are reaping the wonderful fruits of modernity in many ways, whether that's electricity, hot water, easy transportation, all of these things, which are great, we are also experiencing the great rotten fruit of modernity. And that is especially true in our families and in our friendships. Let me just pull a couple quotes from this book that I think are so illustrative of what he's getting at. St. Aelred says, nothing in human life is hungered for with more holiness. Nothing is sought with more utility. Nothing is found with more difficulty. Nothing is experienced with more pleasure. And nothing is possessed with more fruitfulness. Friendship. Friendship bears fruit in our present life and in the next. And in this book, he's going to go through three models of friendship. He talks about carnal friendship, worldly friendship, and spiritual friendship. He talks about how true spiritual friendship is rooted and maintained and has as its end Jesus Christ himself. He even talks about how to choose and test our friends and warns us about being wary of entering into friendships too quickly. It's an incredibly applicable book. It's a book that you could read and say, wow, this not only has changed my ideas, but it's going to change the way I live starting tomorrow. So I would highly recommend it. If you're wondering where to start with medieval literature, start here. Now, is this to say that it's the deepest or best book out of the medieval period? Absolutely not. There's other books that I probably love even more. I mean, you might not know this, but my undergrad thesis, I wrote one for history and theology. They were both on St. Catherine of Siena, and I could read St. Catherine of Siena all day, and she has a special place in my heart. Or if you want to read like Bonaventure or St. Thomas Aquinas, incredible stuff, but kind of more intimidating. And that's not to say there's not even more, like it gets really obtuse in the medieval period. But if you want somewhere easy to start, you want a great book that's going to affect not only your mind, but especially your heart and the way that you live your life, I can't recommend this book enough. I think you're going to really enjoy it. And so that's all for today. What book, though, would you start with? I would love to know what book from the medieval period you have found both accessible, intriguing, and something that is practical for your life. I would love to read it if I haven't already, so let me know down in the comments below. But hey, if you enjoyed this video, I'd encourage you to hit subscribe. And if you want to keep supporting videos like this, you can go to patreon.com/gospel simplicity. And thanks to all my patrons who give so generously to keep the channel going and growing. Well, until next time, be on the lookout for more videos. And as always, go out and love God and love others, because truly above all else, that will change the world.